Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Audio Product Development Alliance. I'm Roger Shively from Shively Acoustics International, and this is the APDA, your gateway to audio product development. Today's topic is Set for Global Stability, Supply Chain and Manufacturing Strategies. And joining us today is Patrik Agren, the CEO of OSM Group. Hello, Pat.
Thank you.
Where are you at? You are in Sweden, is that right?
Yeah, I happen to be visiting our Sweden office here. We had a board meeting this week, and as always, I take the opportunity to stop by in the Swedish office here, so check out
Oh,
what the R&D teams are cooking in the background.
yeah, good. In addition to Patrick online with us from the APDA are Steve Willenberg from Linkplay. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Hi, Roger. How are you doing?
I'm
Looking
good.
forward to the discussion with Patrick today, as always.
Yeah, and Steve, I know, is in the Bay Area.
Yep.
Uh, Dave Lindberg from DB Enterprises and the THD podcast. Welcome.
Hey,
And
how are you?
normally you're in Hong Kong, but you're not today.
No,
But welcome.
calling in from South Africa today.
Oh, yeah. And our media partners is Joel Martins from Audio Express, and we thank them. And we also thank for the support from Adam Levinson from Levinson Consulting. So before we get started, maybe just a little bit about the APDA for those who are not familiar yet. The Audio Product Development Alliance is the only organization focused on exclusively developing audio product development education, providing current and relevant content that can be experienced in person, also live online like now, or on demand for later. It's combined with valuable cross-industry knowledge sharing. The APDA serves as a networking hub for the audio industry, offering access to experts and colleagues for professional development. The APDA is where we come to learn how to build relationships and build better audio products. And here we talk about design, measurements, simulations, supply chain as today, and automotive applications, headphones, earphones also today, wireless technology, and even touch on industry standards. And we like to thank also Spencer, who's producing us today for this live talk. We're recording as well, so you can check us out on the YouTube channel later. You can share it, like us, join us often. But we also will be looking in the YouTube chat for some comments and questions, but we also would invite you to join us in our WhatsApp group, and there's a live chat that you can join even now at this moment if you want to, or later. At any time, we'll be looking for questions and comments in there, and we'll keep the conversation going later on. But like I said, we'll also be checking out our YouTube chat to see what's going on there for questions as well. So please scan the QR code and join us on WhatsApp now, and for later on, we'll keep everybody interested and keep the conversation going. So let me start with you, Patrik. You're the CEO of OSM Group, and you joined them, I think I understood, about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
about 2015, right? So it's been 10 years actually coming up to this August. It's exactly 10 years.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow. And as I understand, it was founded in Sweden, which is partially why you're there in 2024. 2004.
Yeah.
But it's now headquartered in Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yeah, so we did that change quite a few years back. Actually, I think the industry changed quite a bit. We had a diverse management team all over the globe, basically Sweden, UK, US, etc. And it was just very difficult to run a company in a high-paced environment, being so fragmented, right? We see the audience here today, right? We're all in different time zones. It's very complicated. So we did that move around the same time that I came in, and that has worked quite well since then, actually.
Okay, so, well, yeah, well, I know you have some material you want to share. We can do that, and maybe we can start with just your journey. How did you come to OSM, and maybe how OSM is transformed and has grown, perhaps. If that's in the slides that you presented, you've given us, I'll bring those up, or if you.
Yeah, I think we can take that question first, and then you can share the slides as we progress,
Okay,
right?
sure.
And as you said, Roger, I mean, we've been around since 2004. Obviously, we had quite a diverse history over these 20 years. We had to start, stop, and reinvent the company several times, right? So prior to that I came in, we had large engagements with Nokia and BlackBerry back in those days for a lot of mobile accessories. And
Oh, okay,
obviously,
yeah.
everybody who's been in the industry knows what has happened with those two companies. And we never pursued, for instance, the Apple track, right?
Right.
So that meant that around 2009, 10, we had to reinvent the company quite heavily, and we went through quite a tough restructuring time. Coming up to 14, 15, when I joined, we started to formulate a new strategy. We had a very different value proposition. We brought a lot of the manufacturing in-house. Instead, we set up proper R&D centers in sort of engineered soft goods as we had it then. And that kept us quite busy for 4 or 5 years. And around 2019 and 2020, we started also to lay the foundation for the current strategy, which is now engineer soft goods and integrated solutions together with electronics. And that's also led us to an acquisition we did in 2020, basically. And we've spent now the last 5 years integrating that and refining the value proposition. So that really takes us to where we are today, right? So,
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share the screen, but we can just jump around as much as we might want. So this is you. So we already know who you are. So the topic here is from Sweden to China and the Philippines, designed for manufacturing of audio products. I think you've kind of covered some of this, but if you want me to, just let me know which slides are best for what you
yeah,
want to
no,
talk
we
about.
can probably stay a little bit in this one, right? So we've as we said, been around since 2004. Currently, production facilities in China and Philippines. Philippines, obviously, them being sort of the latest addition there. R&D hub in Stockholm. The way we split that a bit is that we do sort of more of the research part of the R&D and more of the development in Sweden, and then we do more of the development part in China and Hong Kong. So that's how we sort of tag team the R&D combo there. And as I mentioned, then our origins is really more on the engineered soft goods side. And then we have, over the past 5 years, transitioned sort of into audio and electronics. But most of the people that's been with the company for a longer time, they typically have an electronics background, so they kind of had to learn the softer side of the industry. So for some people, like myself, for instance, it was actually coming back home again, since I spent 20 years prior to joining OSM then in an electronics industry, and also joined some audio companies prior to that also. And as we say, their core capabilities becomes for us kind of a unique value proposition, where we're one of these few companies out there that are experts in both of these disciplines. And any customer who wants to do an hybridized product, they typically end up with the challenge. They have to outsource the whole project in a fragmented piece, and that typically never ends particularly well. So our value proposition sits very well with them, right? So.
Well,
Patrick, from a development perspective, as far as your business is concerned, what percentage is true R&D, where you guys don't have a customer and you're doing research and development, versus customer projects, which are a customer comes and says, I want this, can you help me develop it? Can you
Yeah.
kind of expand into that area?
Absolutely. And I would say, I mean, we're a true ODM in that sort of sense, right? Obviously, we do most of the work we do is customer work at the end of the day. And I think that we are better described as an ODM with very good integration capabilities, right? So we typically joke a bit and we say that with our R&D, we have a small R and a big D. But that also means that in order for us to be competitive, have very good time to market, be cost effective, we have to also have speculative developments. So the last couple of years, we have X amount of initiatives that we are driving, right? So right now, for instance, we are taking our sort of take on what is an ANC product of the future. So that's something that we're developing right now, and that's part of the reason why I stopped by in the office here to check on the status and check where we are with project timelines and sampling, etc. Right? So that becomes a very important part for us to be able to offer customers derivative products coming out of that into 26, for instance. Right?
So a lot of that is in ANC, you think? Is that the leading edge of what you think your research is on, or
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it over a lot of things?
So we have actually sort of a quite a large span, right? We'll see later, and we have a sort of a business vertical that we've defined as portable audio, right? And that's very heavy on hearing protection. It's heavy on headphones and on speakers. So obviously, when we develop speculative technologies, it needs to fit into one of these three categories. And the perfect thing, if it, for instance, can touch all of these three product groups within the same verticals.
Okay. All right.
Right. And just like coming from a skill set kind of point of view, like obviously like a lot of headphones will have a case that goes with them. So that's kind of complementary to the product. But in terms of like the skill sets of your staff, so like R&D, are those people, there's kind of separate divisions for R&D for soft goods and such. And kind of my question is like when it comes to production, are you able to get synergies like from the assembly teams and operators? Like the same person that puts together a case, would they be the same person that's able to run soldering in an electronics assembly?
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's a good sort of question, right? So maybe what's the best way to answer that? Maybe sort of take a couple of steps back. Part of the reasons when we did the acquisition 5 years ago, we wanted to create a value proposition for our customers, right? So the main purpose of doing that was not like in a traditional sense, let's put two companies together, let's increase efficiency, increase the top line, and squeeze the bottom line, etc. I'm a firm believer that those things will come by doing proper execution, have a great value proposition, and just serve your clients in the best possible way, right? So the core reason for doing it was really to create a better value proposition that fits the future, right? Then obviously, have we had synergies from this? Well, of course, but more from sort of back-end functions, right? Being able to have economies of scales, finance, HR, all of these back-end function, we can definitely get more sort of synergies from. When it comes to operators, if you take engineered soft goods, for instance, you have cut and sew and heat press and high frequency welding, to name a few. Those are sometimes quite not like artisan tradesmen, but they're quite specialist people. It takes a lot of training. It takes many years to become very skilled at that, right? But I would say the more we progress into automation, that also helps us to exchange and use our labor force across the different product verticals. But they're relatively separated, actually, unless we have heavy automation, then it is possible to switch in between, right? So,
okay.
Huh. So it's an interesting concept. I mean, normally when we think of ODMs, where you're focused on a part, but you're talking about the entire package, which is unique, I think, for you. I'm not. Maybe it's not. Maybe Dave has more experience in the fact that there is someone who is assembling the entire package all the time. But it seems like you have most of that in-house. Is that right? You're bringing in most of your talent is in-house, it sounds like.
yeah. So, we've also taken a slightly different route. I mean, many years back, I think vertical integration was sort of the buzzword for almost a decade, and everybody tried to
Right.
vertically integrate as much as possible, right? Our take on that has been that we would like to vertically integrate the services that we are offering, right? So you can come to us, and we will then take care of sort of the whole package for you. But that doesn't mean we do everything in-house. We don't have injection molding in-house, for instance. When we look at that market as a commodity, same thing with SMT, there's an abundance of expertise out there, and our projects are quite diverse. So in order for us to be able to handle that all in-house, we would have to have a massive organization, and we would never be able to be experts in all those areas. So that's how we solve that equation and problem for us, right? And so far it's worked well. So.
Yeah, so you look at the experts that are well versed in the science and the technology, and then you work with those groups to provide the products and services, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And today footprint across the whole supply chain becomes so critical, right? So having a very diversified raw material and part supplier network is absolutely critical. And if I would have all of that in-house, we wouldn't be able to manage that. And the other business vertical that we have the portable audio, and then we have what we call protect and carry. And what that basically means is that any devices that needs to be protected for one reason or another, or carried, we do solutions for that. And obviously in portable audio, there's a lot of devices like headphones and speakers, etc., that needs to have some level of accessories, either their inbox or outbox, that goes together with the product. And then the customer doesn't have to outsource that; we'll take care of that for them.
And does it give you flexibility in terms of the ability to move things around? Obviously, the tariffs are, the buzzword of today, just because of the uncertainty. What kind of flexibility do you have as far as outsourcing it to the various countries within around the globe, honestly?
Yeah. So what we've done now is that we've spent a bit of time, and we continue to spending time, money, and effort in making sure that our footprint is very, let's call it, consistent, right? So that I want to make sure that we're able to do our full value proposition in every site that we operate. Not that we have 20, but you know what I mean, right? That a customer that comes into our site in China, comes into our site in the Philippines, they should really recognize themselves, and every products and capabilities that we have in China should eventually also be able to be replicated in the Philippines. Research and development we've kept outside of Philippines at the moment, but at some point we will of course expand and grow those type of capabilities there also. So, but we always prepare that site both for engineered soft goods and electronics from day one. So.
Okay.
And then with regards to software, I noticed you've got a presence in India. Is that for that area of expertise?
No. So that's actually a pure sales office, and that's the reason why we're there, and we do have a legal entity there as well. But on the area of software and firmware, we've also noticed I think for a company of our size, we do get a lot of feedback that most of our customers appreciate the fact that we take firmware and software very seriously, right? A lot of people have a tendency to outsource that, but we've never had any success with that, the model. And we think that software and hardware are very intimately joined together. So we want to have full control over that. Otherwise, we can't produce the results that we need. So
yeah, no, totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a nightmare for customers trying to get any kind of customization with their Bluetooth device. So that's a great reason to have it in-house at OSM. Is just minor things can be a nightmare with other vendors. So just a point to people.
Absolutely.
And Patrik, do you work with the chip companies from an electronics perspective in the various markets that you do serve?
Yeah. So that's a good point, right? So coming back to the fact that we perceive ourselves as a very advanced integrator, right? That also means that our strategy is also built on the fact that we need to surround ourselves with the right tech partners. They can have various profiles, right? But obviously, chip vendors are a key part of that. There are other companies like, if anyone has heard about a company called Exeger in Sweden, for instance. That's also one of our technology partners that we surround ourselves with, together with a handful of others. And without those kind of guys, we wouldn't be able to build the value proposition that we offer to our customers, because it's not our role in the ecosystem to spend $100 million in coming up with something like that. That's not what we do. We create fantastic products, and we do that using our technology partners' technologies, and we function as an integrator and tie that together. So that's really how we use them in a strategic context. So. And maybe on this slide here, right? I mean, this is some of the service models that we do. So I mean, a couple of years back, we just took the liberty of kind of defining this a little bit more, because there was a lot of different versions of and definitions of ODM and OEM and contract manufacturing and JDM, right? So I mean, we do have full-fledged design teams that goes everywhere from industrial design to ideation, concept, etc. Obviously, a lot of our customers have the same capabilities, and they take their brand and everything very, very seriously. So it's not always that we engage with industrial design for our customers, but we have the capability. And we have had the customers that has come to us and said, "Hey, I want to take 10% of my design budget, and I want you guys to apply like a fail fast type of concept where I want you to tell me what is going to work at the end of the day." And most of these things never see the daylight. So that's a standalone service we occasionally sell. Pure product development, that also happens where it never comes into to manufacturing, perhaps not even with us, but it's rare. ODM and JDM is really the backbone of the company. So 90% of the business, 80% at least, goes through ODM or a JDM model. And ODM is really sort of the big one. But JDM, sometimes customers have certain teams that they want to engage, and then we embed them into the program, and we just make a very detailed scope of work so that there's no confusion on who's doing what, right? And we're anyway always accountable for the outcome. Outsourcing, we still do that to some extent. We have a strong preference to do everything in-house, but we do have clients that come to us and says, "Hey, I mean, we're anyway doing 5 projects with you. I have something that's a bit odd. Could you manage this for me so that I can just go to one shop," right? And then we're happy to say yes to that.
And Patrik, what about certifications? Obviously, on a global basis, it becomes pretty complex. Each country has, their different nuances, if you will, of certification. Do you guys have a cross-functional team to work on that type of activity?
Yep, definitely. And I think we've taken that very seriously, right? So I mean, since we need to control the design, I encourage customer to hold us accountable for those results as well, right? So we need to make sure that certifications are done properly, and if there's any modifications we need to do, it's on us, right? So we work with all the large testing houses out there, and we run certifications for pretty much any country that these type of products are being sold in, right? So take full responsibility for that.
And even do you extend it into the software firmware with content providers and companies that require that from a software or firmware side of the
Yeah. So if you're thinking about sort of app development, so we don't do mobile app development in-house, but most of our customers have specialized firms that they're working with. So we always work directly with them. So we have great relationships with a few companies in quite a few different countries, right? And since most of our customers they span everything from Fortune 500 to much, much smaller guys. So some of them have been in that business for a long time, but then we work directly with those app developers.
And it may be premature. Do you have a breakdown of the markets that you service?
Yeah, so I mean, we made well, I wouldn't call it a choice. I think it was more we realized that where we achieve best success is typically with European or North American clients. So that's where we have concentrated our efforts, and it's pretty much a 50-50, 60-40, slight majority over in US then. I'd like to grow that a bit more in sort of Europe, a little bit because of our heritage, and I think that in terms of number of customers, we're a little bit underrepresented there, but we're making good strides towards that.
So the size of your customer, you said it could be the Fortune 500, but it could be a smaller group. It's how small do you go?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And we I had a conversation yesterday with a customer that is more sort of in the scale up phase, right? And I tried to explain to them that we take a lot of effort in deciding on who we should work with, because we have this tendency of over investing in all of the relationships that we're working with, right? What we do like is customers that sets the bar high for themselves and high for us. So I personally love customers that comes in with a very high ambition level, right? So I think a lot of our smaller clients, they get very reassured given the fact that we have clients that we worked with for 15 and in some cases over 20 years that are Fortune 500 companies. That also means that they have over the years sort of whipped us in a pretty good shape. So a lot of the smaller guys, they feel very comfortable that we can start, but we're able to grow with them. So scaling with them is never going to become any issue, right? I think we're obviously, like any other ODM, a bit cautious when it comes to doing startups. I mean, we've done this for a long, long time, and we know what the percentage chance is for someone to succeed, right? So we do our due diligence, and we have this open and frank discussion with the customers. But to answer your question a bit more direct, right? We do favor some of the startups have very interesting products, and they're brave enough to go outside of sort of the normal mold, and that's what we like. They do have a tendency to make very exciting products.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because say it's not it has an audio aspect to it, but it's not an audio product per se, but it has some audio components to it. Maybe it's a medical device that has audio devices components to it. Is that something that would interest you, or you say, well, that's not our expertise, but we can do, can I do part of that, or would you say, maybe not for us, if that
Yeah,
was the
I
case?
mean, yeah, I mean, as much as we try to be sort of focused in where we're good at, right? Because I'm a big fan of setting things up for success and not for sort of
Right.
failure. We typically look at this a bit more at how does it fit our capabilities. Just because it doesn't fit into the verticals or the product categories that we have sort of kind of defined, and I think that picture is a good case. We typically qualify all of these opportunities. How great is the match with the true underlying capabilities that we have, right? So obviously for something like the product categories that you're seeing here, you have a lot of mechanical RF, etc. So as long as that sort of fits, if it's an adjacent product group, we're more than willing to look at that. And from what we're seeing, a lot of these, you mentioned medical, for instance. So we're having a couple of projects now that has a very interesting sort of adjacent connection between soft goods, measurement, RF, etc. So it's very difficult to define where does that product lie, but it fits us perfect because we're expert in all these underlying capabilities, and that makes it interesting for us.
Okay.
Mm.
And in the the R and the D part of what you do, there is engineering design, there is what level of research or development do you go into besides software perhaps, or chip development or chip integration? Do you do physical design work, acoustical design work as well, or what is it you work in?
Yeah. So when I sort of mentioned some of the platforms that we're doing now in terms of sort of headphones and ANC capabilities, and sort of the feature list is quite sort of long there, because I think that
Right.
that part of the industry has sort of been relatively stagnant. I think there's a big need for something really new in sort of the headphone space, right? You also have obviously like low latency. So a lot of the customers that we're working with is in a particular let's say field and industry where low latency requirements are super important, right? So those
Exactly.
are two areas that we're definitely trying to come up with speculative technology development that we can sort of then slot into a lot of these different products that we're working on today, right?
Okay, well, good. And so besides this, of course, you have the protect and carry that you talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And as you can see from these sort of pictures here, it's a slightly different type of products, but as David also pointed out, I mean, it could very well be that a lot of these devices that we saw on the previous picture, they needs to be carried, they need to be protected in sort of some sort. One of the benefits that this business vertical gives as well, that the team that works here is very skilled in materials and very skilled in CMF and finishing, right? And I noticed that the days are over where people buy boring consumer products in black plastic. Those days are gone, right? So that sort of hand feel and being able to have a real solid CMF discussion, that's super important. So we do put a lot of our sort of engineers in the protect and carry part to also discuss with the customers in portable audio, and that seems to work out fantastic, actually.
Okay. And then, of course, this is where you bring it together.
Yeah. So if you look at that sort of like a Venn diagram, and you have the protect and carry, you have the portable audio with some of the product examples, and then you have these hybridized solutions that kind of sits in the middle, and that really becomes sort of the extra value add that we bring to the table. This is although quite an interesting space because it's a lot of customers haven't really figured out what this means for them. And I'm very happy to see that over the last, I would say, 12 months, there starts to be quite a big shift where we are figuring out and our customers are figuring out very interesting product concepts that sort of fits that hybrid part in the middle. That has taken a little bit of time. When we did that acquisition about 5 years ago, we went out to all our customers and we made a bold statement and said that we think that we're the only company that has these capabilities at this point. And I would say that none of our customers challenge us on that sort of statement. But we also can see now that over the past 4 years, there is at least 3 very large Taiwanese and Chinese companies that has done exactly the same thing, but they've done the reverse. They came from large electronics background and they have acquired engineered soft goods companies. So I typically joke and say, I mean, either we're all right or we're all wrong, and we're soon about to find out, right? But something is anyway cooking in that part of the industries.
Yeah, but from a customer perspective, a consumer perspective, the materials for these products are important. It's while the core product, the headphone or whatever you're selling as the core product is very important. The carrying case. I know, from feedback that we've gotten, it's just very, very high on people's lists to have something that is, not only that looks good, but is functional and durable. And that's got to take, investment and time and resources to find these materials, because it's not a trivial matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also would mention that I find that some of the leading brands like an Apple or an Amazon or a Logitech, they spend an immense amount of focus on the materials, solutions, and innovation in that section. Almost like to the degree, like I've worked with Nike or Amazon. They're both fanatical about materials. It's interesting because it differentiates them from everyone else.
Yeah. And I think, David, you have such a long experience in this industry, so you will also know that you have certain set of clients or customers out there that thinks that sort of accessory part is as important as the main product. So they don't even allow some of their ODMs to provide those solutions for them if they don't have those type of capabilities as a core capability. So some of those brands, they will come to a company like us, for instance, and then we then become an assigned supplier for another larger ODM that is only doing, for instance, the headset or the actual device, right? So that has definitely happened. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to create that value proposition where our customers doesn't have to shop around and, have that confusion around, does this fits with this? And they are being burdened with all that coordination. Now they don't have to do that. They come to us, we sit down and we discuss this journey from A to Z, right? And that is quite powerful when the right customer is using our capabilities the right way, becomes very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Amazon consign manufacturing equipment into factories that they select. So like they go, this you need this stuff. Then they have some more advanced like financing method where the machine becomes the asset of that factory, and then that factory in turn can provide it to many people as a solution.
Okay.
Okay. I think one thing we want to kind of parlay into here is like the Philippines operation.
Yeah, I was
We
going
had
to ask that question because I see Philippines on the map, and I'm sure
so like
that's
I
a
think
new place.
yeah, so I think everybody now because of this tariff issue is bombarded with where can we go outside of China, and it's a moving target, but maybe kind of give a backstory on how this came about and what benefits you see and synergies you see and the whole like replicating what you've done in China for success. How is that coming together for Philippines?
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's try to sort of peel the layers a bit here. So I think we started these discussions maybe around 2019, 2020, right? So I would say we weren't the first ones sort of, but we were anyway relatively early in understanding that if we're going to reach success, we need to be able to offer options and solutions, right? I typically say that part of our mandate and part of our job is we say no to a lot of things with our customers, but the teams are taught to come up with options. There has to be alternatives. And the same thing when you build a global supply chain for a customer, right? A lot of our European customers, they're not worried at all about the ongoing challenges that we have in China and outside, because it's not a problem for them, right? China is the perfect place. But for many of our other customers, it was very important for us to be able to offer an alternative. As most other people, I'm sure, I mean, we went through Philippines, Vietnam, we studied in Malaysia, we did not look at Indonesia at that point. We looked at Thailand, etc. We shortlisted Philippines and Vietnam at some point. And at the end of the day, we decided for the Philippines. Not a very easy choice, but we felt at the end of the day that the benefits that we found in Philippines outweighed the ones that we found in Vietnam. When we went to Vietnam for sort of trips and we wanted to look at industrial parks, etc., I was always left with this feeling that everybody's rushing here. And when everybody is rushing for exactly the same end goal, there's going to be a bottleneck here sort of somewhere. And we're too small to be able to withstand that. We don't have the brand equity to stand up against these other guys that's going to vacuum the market for labor in certain parts of the year, right? We felt that Philippines had a great trade relationship and the connection with North America, US predominantly. The workforce is very skilled in English, very well educated. So we felt there was a lot of things that sort of felt sort of in the favor of the Philippines. So that was our choice at the end of the day. We took an outside consultant to help us with that has presence in all these countries that I sort of mentioned. And I think through sort of common sense and rationale, it was the best choice for us, right? So that's a little bit how we sort of came there. So obviously increasing capacity was one of the reasons, but I think again, building the right value proposition, that's really the main reason why we sort of did it. Capacity you can arrange anywhere. That's not a big problem.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
did you start this from nothing? Was there no facility and it was a new one, or
Yeah, so we looked at that sort of option, right? But I did feel that was a bit too much of an undertaking. And you can see from that date, right? We opened in 21, which means we did a lot of the work in 2020. I don't know if anyone remembers anymore. There was a sort of a little bit pandemic ongoing at that point. So I can say there's nothing. What is the expression? It's not for the faint of heart to try to build a factory in the midst of COVID. So we actually never went there. And that's the scary part, right? So when I came to the board
Oh,
and asked for all this money to do this, they asked pretty sharp and piercing questions, but we were anyway able to convince them that we would put the budget in place. I think we were lucky enough to find good local consultants. The company that we have worked with that had shortlisted Vietnam and Philippines and helped us in Philippines, they were locally stationed in Manila. So they also helped us quite a lot during this time. But anyway, to answer your sort of question then, so this is what I think I would call a brownfield. So the building was there, but it was sort of raw concrete when we moved in, right? So the infrastructure was sort of there. But yeah, it did take quite a bit of time and effort to get it to the shape where we are now. So.
okay. And Dave, I think you have some experience with companies in the Philippines and those who are moving or expanding into. Has it always been an easy thing for moving from China to Philippines, or at least for the customers or for the manufacturers?
There usually is something unique about the people that are set up. I don't see Chinese firms moving to expand to Philippines. And that actually brings up a question is like, Patrick, why do you think the Chinese are so focused on expanding to Vietnam versus other places? Is there a theory that you might have about this?
Yeah, I do have one. There's one that I want to share and one that I don't want to share. But I would say that, sometimes the more people that is already there, it gives this sense of security, but I think that can be a false sense of security. But if you go to visit there and you see that you have a whole bunch of your countrymen already there, it feels like an easy choice, right? So I think that is one of the reasons why I think a lot of Chinese companies are more comfortable going to Vietnam. And then, of course, you have a lot of historical and political connections that makes it easier. Philippines, you're absolutely right. There's definitely less Chinese companies there. I do see a bit of a difference. Predominantly, you have today the supply chain is now consisting of Korean, Japanese, and Chinese companies. But I would say that the influx the last couple of years, most of our new suppliers now are all Chinese. We have some close partners that we're going to bring in, or we're not bringing them in, but we're helping them to come in very close to us, or even into the country. So it is changing, but it's much slower than Vietnam, 100% sure.
So the locale is as strategic as Vietnam, or Vietnam is as strategic as the Philippines, but you had different thought process rather than going to Vietnam, and you felt that this was a better economy, better location for you to grow in?
Yeah, so I
Because you
mean,
are growing. It says you're growing, so that's good.
yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, it felt like a good fit for us, a good fit for the company of our size. It felt less crowded. Obviously, you have certain setbacks with that also, right? I mean, the underlying supply chain is far more developed in Vietnam than what it is compared to the Philippines. So you have to sometimes be a little innovative in how you bring material in and what can you actually find localized, etc. But we anyway felt that also the level of ability to speak English is extremely high in Philippines, as anyone knows that I visited. So it's very easy to communicate, and that's really good. And the underlying level of education is good. So there was a lot of pros that led us to do that. So.
Yeah, and that I've heard that from a lot of individuals and companies. Vietnam, while it has its benefits, let's face it, that was kind of the country du jour, if you will, once things started getting outsourced from China, for a variety of reasons. And when you're looking for, workers, and as you said, Patrick, the bottleneck is, you start seeing multiple bottlenecks, and that becomes an issue with the smaller type of companies versus, the conglomerates that, that's not going to be an issue. And then the history with the countries, parallel it to what David said, with Malaysia to a certain degree. There's a lot of Chinese historically in Malaysia. And so, the comfort level is a little higher there than I think with the Philippines, which isn't as Chinese centric as, some of these other countries. But, like with anything, I'm sure it is changing. And the dynamic is always going to, change, and the complexities are always going to evolve.
Absolutely. And while we're on this slide, then one thing to connect from the previous one, right? So we went with Clark as our location in the Philippines, which is, I would say, maybe a bit of a brave choice. Typically, all the current companies of our nature are typically located a bit further south. So those industrial parks, they've been around for much, much longer time. But we also felt that the proximity to the Clark Airport is extremely good. We're 10 minutes away 15 minutes away from the airport. You have access to Manila and sort of Subic, so you have two ports relatively close. The Clark is also emerging as a bit of a new economic center in the Philippines. They are building a high-speed railway straight from Manila Airport to Clark Airport that I think will be ready late this year or during next year. Government is going to relocate most of the resources up from the Manila to Clark and New Clark area. So there's a lot of investment that is going in there. Still going to take many years before it gets what it will become, right? But we sort of took a bit of a future bet there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there anchors that have helped to drive the supply chain in Philippines? Like, for example, in northern Vietnam, like Honda and some of the car manufacturers went in there, and therefore, ST Micro and everybody else would set up an office. Has there been some anchors in the Philippines historically that are a pull for both electronics and textiles, like for the raw materials?
Yeah, so I mean they are definitely a bit sort of behind in that space, right? But you can see now the last couple of years you have large companies like Dyson, for instance, that is building big manufacturing and big
Yeah.
R&D centers there, right? So there's definitely a move. You have certain chips and semicon manufacturers that has a small percentage of their capacity there, but it definitely exists, even if it's underdeveloped. Automotive, so most of the partners that we work with injection, they have the bulk of their business in automotive. So there is a couple of sort of anchors, as you call them there, right? So for sure.
Mm. And as you mentioned, there's a skilled workforce, and there's English, and there's also, for good or for bad, a trade relationship with the United States. So, how have the recent evolution of tariffs impacted you in whether it's China or the
Yeah,
Philippines, and
I
how are you
mean,
dealing with that?
yeah. I mean, the last 6 months has been a fun roller coaster, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I guess we're maybe it's European, maybe it's a Scandinavian sort of thing, right? We try to make relatively long-term plans. We try to build a company that is going to function this year and 5 years later. But having been in Asia for over 20 years, I also know you have to be extremely agile and adjust your plans very, very often, right? That doesn't mean you can change course
Yeah.
completely. I think the key here is to make a directional decision and then adjust and adjust and adjust as you move sort of forward. I think that's the most important thing. But tariffs, I would say I had personally hoped that the Philippines would fare a bit better than what they have done so far. I know there are still discussions, so I don't think we've seen sort of the real end result yet. So Philippines is now sort of, I guess, on par with Vietnam and Indonesia, at least on sort of the latest tariff round. Let's see where it's going to shake out. There's a few other benefits. I think Philippines and US, given the strong trade relationship, the country of origin requirements, at least for US, is relatively favorable in Vietnam. That can, of course, change quite sort of quickly. But if you compare with, well, relatively favorable in the Philippines. But if you compare with Vietnam, for instance, there are quite strong differences in how the interpretation of COO is actually applied. So that makes it a bit more difficult to actually get it in a country like Vietnam. So.
Okay. I was going to ask if there was an advantage for, you have a location in China, and then now you have something in Philippines, so you can take advantage of that, hopefully, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, for the COO issues. Um, Perhaps, Dave, I know you have the experience too that, I mean, we all work in this audio industry in the consumer products, and is is it's working out well, designed for manufacturing, is working well in the current environment? Is it a hindrance, or how it looks like the future could be bright as long as you have that long-term plan and you make adjustments, as you say. Um, so right now, the environment that we're living in is still good for audio product development. I think that's a question you might have had, Dave, in your mind as well, just to try to understand
Yeah,
where we
well,
are.
I think just the volume of headphones that people are consuming globally, it's not slowing down. So maybe Patrick can echo that if he's
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah,
growing.
I would sort of say our business during the bigger part of COVID was actually fantastic. We had our best years right in the midst of that. I think right after that sort of supply chain crunch and the component shortages and spot buys and everything, there was quite a massive slump in sentiment, right? You had supply chains that were backed up. We had customers that were sitting on a lot of stock. They had several containers to coming in. They wanted to push out orders, etc. It was quite, everybody was waiting and seeing, right? I think the last 6, 8, 10 months, it has really shifted. And I remember quite sort of vividly the other day, I did have a good discussion with the guys from Qualcomm maybe about a year ago, and they were very clear on foreseeing the future, because when they talk to our clients on future projects, they're about a year ahead of us getting engaged, right? So their prediction was actually spot on, right? So now we see that the number of inquiries and the number of discussions, the pipeline that we have, and what the one that we built the last 6 months is in much better and bigger shape than what it was sort of 12, 18 months ago. So we do see quite a big trend that is finally happening now, which is great, of course.
Good. You mentioned Qualcomm. Are there other brands that are, I mean, consumer brands that are seeing advantages to the Philippines and moving production there as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, Qualcomm is sort of more obviously
Yeah, yeah.
part of our products are using
Mm-hmm.
a lot of their sort of products, right?
Right.
I think when it sort of comes to manufacturing in China and overseas, or like in our case for the Philippines, we try to advise our customers to have the most flexible setup, right? Because where tariffs and trade relationships are going to go tomorrow, it's a crystal ball. No one really knows, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we try to target, if the volumes allow and budgets allow, we prefer to set up a supply chain where we provide North America, predominantly US, with products made in the Philippines. We'd like to do the rest of the world coming out of China because it's less of an issue. Whenever COO requirements allows us, we try to retain as much of the raw material supply chain in China, so we have ultimate flexibility. That basically means that at any given point, we can pump orders out of China, or we can quickly shift volumes into Philippines. And we can also retract from that position later if it would be needed and go back to a complete China-based supply chain. Or we can push forward, relinquish China, and push into Philippines, right? And then we just need to decide finally what do we do with components, right? So that we figured out that gives us the absolute most flexibility. And my advice to customers is that please make sure that do pay a little bit extra for that flexibility, because it will benefit you. And I think most customers will agree, and they're willing to build a supply chain that can tolerate changes, right?
Yeah, and then continuing on that topic, Patrick, the supply chain, I'm assuming, has gotten pretty well versed in terms of being as flexible as possible, for their business, whether it's a pole piece or, backplate, or, some type of speaker component, the electronics. Because when you go backwards, if you will, in terms of the supply chain, it all adds up in terms of, how the products are built and the locations that they're being produced. So from that perspective, I've got to believe that, you guys working with those companies, it's not just we're going to buy this, component from you. You're working out more of a strategic approach going forward in terms of the ability to continue that supply of components, because that's so important, obviously.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we engage with new vendors, for instance, we pick them based on their footprint, so that they have ability to provide solutions for us in both of our locations, right? So for instance, we could have plastic vendors that is opening up molds in their tool workshop in China. Then they transfer that into Philippines under their own regime, right? But they take total ownership of that. And that's why we'd like to select partners that have that ability, or comes to us and say that they are willing to establish that kind of setup. And then, of course, we repay that by giving them the business, right? So I think it kind of works out. The other aspect that is very important with us as a full ODM, and we sort of channel customers very, very strongly through the development track, is that now when we have like a modular design thinking, we typically put that into the engineer, so that we're able to simplify the manufacturing process and make it suitable for the supply chain of the future, where we want to have that flexibility, right? So you have the ability to do certain pre-assemblies, etc., and really take advantage of the fact that we're designing something that's going to go in our own manufacturing lines, and we're designing something that needs to fit the multi-site setup that we have, right? So that's a real advantage.
Yeah, I think the modularity is a key element to that. Having that capability in multiple locations, from a design, that's the core, if you will, and then the specialty or the special sauce comes on top of that to make it what the end customer wants it, and that's a very powerful tool to have in your tool belt.
Yeah, and also the idea of having like a plastics vendor that has multiple locations to eliminate finger pointing if you're trying to like transferring a tool to another vendor is it's just not worth it for the most
Yeah,
part.
and I typically say, right, I mean, one clear evidence where you have sort of customers or partners or speaking partners that are you have to go through that painful process to learn once and for all that that's not the way to do it. So we humbly decline requests that, can you take over? I have a tool with another vendor. Can you take it over? It's going to be real straightforward. I think we've learned the hard way that it never works out like that. So you have to be willing to retool if you want to move production, right? So, yeah.
Right.
So the way that everyone engages with OSM, I mean, you have a New Delhi sales office. You're getting uh, people coming in New Delhi looking for help with OSM, or is it how do people engage with you? Your sales force encounters them, or they encountered your sales force?
Yeah, good sort of question, right? So obviously, since we're active in portable audio and the protect and carry, we try to, as much as possible, identify sort of the target customers that we believe is a good fit, right? And at the end of the day, then you have to verify that. I'm a big believer in that you have to have this fundamental fit, so you get that sort of click when you engage with someone, right? So we have a whole bunch of customers that, of course, finds us because they have figured out that we are perhaps helping some of their competitors with something that they think is a fantastic product, and they figure out, so our phone rings. But I never like to sort of rely on the fact that a customer needs to find us. We need to go out there, we need to speak with them, and we need to provide value at the end of the day. So we're quite sort of specific in creating customer target lists. If we have new initiatives, we typically create a customer target list around those, and then we go out and speak to them and validate and see if there's something that adds value. And if it does, there's typically business. If there's not, you move on, right? That's it. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a major weakness of a lot of the Chinese factories is their exposure to the world. How do they draw in new customers? Because it's no longer if we build it, they will come for China. They're going to have to be proactive in drawing new customers, and I think this is an opportunity for marketers to help some of these the
yeah,
Chinese factories.
could be, and I mean, we also, I mean, the typical people that we hire are typically quite senior. They've worked for a lot of companies in this industry. They can sit down with most of our customers and have a very fluent, mature conversation, everything from industrial design, supply chain, quality specs, etc. And I think that's really key. And I've noticed many customers are really lacking that sort of having that competent sounding board in all aspects of the interaction with an ODM. That's you would think it's a given, but it's not actually. So
No, I can tell you that OSM has a world-class project management team.
thank you.
Um, I compare that to some of the big dogs that people would put at the top of the list for headphones. So I
But
encourage people to reach out to Patrik if they want a headphone project to
It's
start.
actually that's
Thank
actually
you.
comforting to hear because that doesn't always happen, does it? So, um, so how do you will you be going to trade shows? Does OSM show up in trade shows? Will I see you anywhere? See
Yeah,
OSM running
yeah,
around?
definitely right. So we have not we typically attend, right? So IFA, we go there from time to time. CES,
Hmm.
we always go.
Yeah,
We typically never do booths. We're typically not present on the floor. Some people might ask why. My thinking there is that for a for a company like us, we have to be quite agile. We have to be able to take meetings everywhere. We have to come to our customers, right? I don't
right.
think that it's the right strategy for us to build a big booth, spend 500,000 US, or whatever it's going to cost, and then expect that people come to us, right? We've had much more success with just taking meetings around town, going to other people's booth, bring our sample kits with us. That has really worked for us, right? So that's where you will find us. We do pretty good marketing these days through LinkedIn. So if you're connected, go to our page, follow us, and you'll see every time we are sort of in any public place, we'll typically make a post about it, right? So
That's great. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you in CES. We're going to put up a presence for the APDA and at CES this coming January, and Steve is pushing us towards that nicely. So we'll see you there mostly. More
absolutely.
likely.
No, we'll definitely be there. Tickets are already booked, so that's
All right. And CES is almost ready to open for registration, so that's good.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's summer, and well, everybody's in our industry is thinking it's CES time.
Yes, it is. That's right. So with that, I think thank you very much. That was a beautiful overview and talk. And I know more now. Hopefully everyone else does. I think we've answered a lot of the questions that people had. And so thank you, Patrik.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So just a couple of reminders, speaking of the APDA one more time. In a couple of weeks, we'll have another live talk on September 7th, if I'm correct in remembering that. Steve Temme will be here from Listen Incorporated. After that, later in September, we're putting together a discussion on Bluetooth LE audio. Hopefully that comes together at the end of September. And the APDA will be in Long Beach, California for the AES convention that takes place there October 23, 24, and 25. So please come and find us. If you find the Audio Express booth, you'll find us. Plus, there's some a workshop each day that we're putting on. So please check that out. And also, it's on the screen again. Please join our live chat WhatsApp group so you can engage with us. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is going to have this video sitting there for us, and it'll be there as long as anybody wants to see it, so we can go ahead and keep watching it again and again and catching up on the things we might have missed. So that is mostly what we've tried to do for everyone else as well. So thank you again. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Steve.
Patrick, I thought it was a fantastic discussion. So, we really appreciate the time and the information. I learned a lot, as Roger said. Our goal for the organization is to have companies like yourselves come on and articulate, what's going on in the world, and the complex topic. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, because on the supply chain and then the manufacturing side, we just try to understand how, to give insight on how it works and how you can get involved in it, or find the problems and the challenges. And especially you have experienced those challenges and can help share with others who might even be thinking, and make our industry even stronger, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on. For anyone who's listening, then you can obviously get more information on our website, so osm.group. And if you want to send us an email, if you have any questions, it's contact@osm.group. So feel free to reach out. So
good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Fantastic.
All right. Once again, everyone, like us on the YouTube channel. Follow us. This will be there, up on there. You can watch it again and again, and the other ones that we have set up as well. And we'll have some more coming, as I said. I appreciate it. And once again, thank you to everyone. And thank you for those who tuned in and are watching now. Thank you. And we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.